So at this time, I would like to call forward Jeff Spencer, the Scout Executive for Chester County Council, for a few remarks. Mr. Spencer.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening, everybody. Wow, what a great room. Lots of khakis. You're a good-looking crowd. Ernie, you're a popular guy. Just want to say to Ernie, congratulations personally, Ernie. I've enjoyed getting to know you, and you've been very gracious to me, so congratulations tonight. So wonderful that you're our centennial anniversary honoree. Also, I have a few other people to thank. The chairman of our event tonight has done a phenomenal job. You know, in scouting, when you have great success, it can usually be traced to a dedicated volunteer, and whether it's hardworking scoutmaster who gives so much of their time or talents to directly work with youth, or a district or council level volunteer who's giving back to the program in such a positive way. The leadership for our dinner tonight reflects this same basic principle. And so, I would like to first present a token of appreciation to Mr. Pete Motel for all of his dedicated efforts as chair of the dinner committee, masters of ceremony. So Pete, come on up. I think we've got something nice for you here. Great job, Pete. All right. But Pete did not do this alone. Pete had a very dedicated committee. Great group of leaders who volunteered. They met frequently. The success of tonight is really as a result of their efforts. So I would like to those who are here tonight who served on the committee, I'm going to read all their names, but if you're here, please stand. I know some couldn't make it. Noah Austin, Jim Bennett, Steve Deantonio, AJ Deantonio, Michael DiDomenico, David Dondero, Joel Frank, Matt Griffin, William Grubb, John Kemmer, Eric Lourdes, Jim McErlane, David Mellinger, Rob Neckersalmer, J.B. Ratu, Joe Rubino, Gus Sarzoff, and Jake Siegel, and Stuart Watson. Would you please stand and be recognized? And I believe we have a small token of appreciation for your efforts, too, that the Scouts will recognize you with. So thank you. Great committee. Just a few other remarks from me. This is our 100th anniversary, as if you haven't heard. We're celebrating. We've been celebrating all year in a lot of very unique ways. We did a day of service in April, which was incredible. We did a faith march in September, and if as many of you, I think probably in this room attended, we did a fantastic council camporee out at Hibernia Park. Had 2,600 people out that day. Would just like to give us a shout out to one special person that helped organize these events. Tamara Christensen, wherever you are, thank you. Tamara was phenomenal in putting that together, and she's here with us tonight. This is really our last kind of public celebration of our 100th anniversary. So thanks to everybody for all of your work on that, if you were involved. Also, it's an exciting time in our council in the sense that we are moving. We moved out of our old headquarters building. We're now at the Exton Mall. So if you haven't stopped down to the Exton Mall recently and checked out our outdoor adventure store and said hi, please do. But we're not going to stay there forever. We're building a new service center and also what we're calling PARC, Program Activity and Resource Campus. It's 28 acres right in the heart of Exton. You might have seen where it's going to be, and we actually have dozers moving. So we're planning to go vertical in our building here sometime in January. So that's really exciting. We're hoping to be there in our new facility in about a year and a half. So PARC is really exciting, and it's happening. So look for that in the near future. And a couple other recognitions I'd like to make. Charlie Rogers, where are you? Our former Scout executive, my predecessor. Fresh off the Appalachian Trail. So, thank you, Charlie, for all your service to our council, and great to see you. Also like to thank our staff members who worked on this event tonight. And one in particular I'd like to give a shout out to, Mr. Rick Kurth. Rick's announced his retirement. He's put a lot of these dinners together over the years, done a great job for our council, and had a very distinguished scouting career. So Rick Kurth, where are you? Rick, thank you. Let's give Rick a round of applause. And finally, just to wrap it up, I'd like to thank our donors, all of you, for supporting this event. There's a couple donors in particular that we'd like to thank. Our presenting sponsor tonight is Friends of Troop 78 Incorporated, so thank you so much, Friends of Troop 78, for being our presenting sponsor. Our Eagle sponsor, the Horseshoe Scout Reservation Alumni Association. Thanks so much for stepping up there, being our Eagle sponsor. And then our platinum sponsors, the Heegard family, the Motel family, and the Octorara Lodge number 22. Thank you to our major sponsors tonight for the great result of our dinner. So I will stop talking and turn it back over to Pete. Thanks, everybody, so much for being here tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to conduct several auctions to raise some more funds for the camp. So, how's it going with those centerpieces? Have you all taken a look at that bid card yet? Pass it around. Pass it around. We're not closing that yet. Sig, you ready? I do. We're going to go to, while everybody's working on those centerpieces, it can go around the table a couple times. We are going to go to the live auction items. I'd like to turn this over to Sig Fleck for that. Sig? Thanks, buddy. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Just for the record, we set an aggressive fundraising goal for tonight, all for the good of the camp and the cause, right? Scouting. And we didn't make the goal yet, so we're working on it. And we're getting closer. Thank you very much. So we are going to go to what we call a reverse auction, which is where you will have an opportunity to make a cash pledge. And we're going to start out at a kind of a biggish number and work our way down. And we have pledge cards, which we will pass out to anyone who wishes to help. And what we plan is that this money will go to camp. So for the purpose of supporting Jake's budget, where is Jake? Where is he? There he is. Because in Jake's budget is a line for what are called camperships, which are scholarships that the council designates to scouts in need. And last year, we had about $35,000 in camperships, thanks to your generosity. Yes. So what we're going to do now is start out at a certain number. We hope you're all going to pitch in. And as I said, we'll work our way down. And we'll stop the pledges at $50. So everything in between, right? So who will start me off with a pledge of $1,000? Oh, sorry. The lady in the front row who's helping my bottom line. It was. Sir. And scouts and all, everyone help with the passing out of the pledge cards. Thank you. Anyone else? 2, we had 2, that's great. We're getting closer. 3, we have 3 for $1,000. Anybody else? 1,000. 1,000 to help send scouts to camp. I'm sorry, Dave, you're on. Another one, thank you very much, Evelyn. We have it's about $400 for a scout to go to camp. So a gift of $1,000 will help several scouts. Thank you very much. For a full week at camp. That's right. Can anyone make a pledge of $500? Who can make a pledge of $500? Sig, you're on. You're on, Bruce. Jeff, thank you very much. And my family is helping my bottom line here. Thank you, Dad, my mother-in-law. I'm in good graces for Thanksgiving. Bob. Yep. Who can help with a pledge of $500? Anyone else? Hold your hand up. Thank you very much. Another one in the back. Who can help us with a pledge of $250? Who can do $250 to send a scout to camp? Sir, thank you very much. Hold your hands up high. The generosity in this room is unbelievable. I really appreciate you all tonight. Anyone else? Who can make a pledge of $100 to send a scout to camp? Hold your hands up if you can. Thank you very much. Another one here. Amy? Yep. Couple more. Thank you very much, everybody. Who can make a pledge to send a scout to camp of $50? Who can make a pledge of $50? Hold your hands up, please. Anyone? Yes. There we go. Are we out of pledge cards? If we run out of pledge cards, that would be super. Oh, no chance of running out of pledge cards. That's right. The day ain't over yet. Thank you all for your wonderful support for camping in Chester County. Now, I'd like to call up some speakers who will give tribute to our friend Ernie. Say a few words. We have Bill Grubb. Where's Bill? There he is. Bill, please come up to the podium. Bill worked at camp for Ernie for 7 years. Bill here was my first director in aquatics back when I was a CIT. That was a little ways back. There was a 19 in front of the century. We had many, many happy times in aquatics. We had our site up on the hill above the pool, you all might remember. And there the staff hung out. Bill. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to be here to speak about Ernie. Walter Payton said, when you're good at something, you'll tell everyone. But when you're great at something, they will tell you. George Ernest Seagard, I'm telling you that you are great. First ballot Hall of Fame great at being a scout leader, young adult mentor, teacher, supporter of all things Chester County BSA, and person. You've guided and taught tens of thousands of young men, and we thank you. I had the pleasure to work with Ernie on staff from 68 to 76, with a couple of skipped years. No doubt these were my growing up years, although my beautiful wife Joy might disagree that I've ever grown up. Having trouble speaking. Ernie has been my most influential male role model aside from my father. Yes, there were other scoutmasters that were important, and I thank them. I know J.B. Ratu is here tonight, and thanks certainly go to him. But when you work on staff, you work the entire summer together, not just a week or so. Ernie has an infectious, positive attitude that makes you want to do your best and improve. When you have his attention, he can make it seem like the two of you are the only ones in the room, even if that room is the crowded Allen Memorial Dining Hall. On staff, I wanted to get picked to work jobs with Ern, even crappy ones, simply because it meant you got to work with him. Please notice how I said that in past tense, though. I don't want to get picked for crappy jobs anymore. Thank you. He's such a charismatic leader. When he leads a song, everyone jumps in immediately. Speaking of tempers, when I first started off, I was told by a sage senior staffer that I was lucky because Ernie had mellowed. But he also gave me the secret on how to read his mood. Since he was naturally fair-skinned, you just needed to follow the blood level up as it boiled, like a thermometer. If the middle of the ear started to get red, you were treading on thin ice and needed to diffuse the situation. Most often that meant just doing the thing he asked you to do. I personally don't know of anyone that saw his forehead get red and lived to tell about it, but there were legends. We kid because we love Ern. In '72, Hurricane Agnes hit Pennsylvania. The Susquehanna rose so much that they considered blowing off part of the Conowingo Dam to save the rest. A brand-new camp road was washed away, the OA Bridge knocked down, and the swimming pool that we all know and love was 5 feet underwater. The brown Octorara water and mud was flowing across the athletic field. Oh, and Bill George's and my tents were crushed by a 14-inch tree or 14-inch diameter tree that dropped that morning. The flood was Thursday, and by Friday morning, the water receded. Camp would normally open in 2 days. Ernie made it abundantly clear, you might say unmistakably clear, that camp would open on schedule. Now, Ernie had the entire camp to worry about, but the pool was a major problem. As he was working through options on how to turn the mud hole back into the camp pool, the overworked and underloved aquatic staff was offering numerous free suggestions to the tune of, "This is hard. We don't have the right tools. This isn't fun, it's work." As we complained, I think the final comment was, "We'll have to work all night." Ernie just responded, "We're going to open on Sunday. Do whatever it takes, boys." Do whatever it takes, boys. It wasn't comforting, but it was straightforward and needed. I didn't understand then, but I realized later that us working, regardless of whether it was busy work or not, stopped us from helping him captain the ship. To close the story, we did work hard. The camp opened on time, but the pool didn't. Part of the first week, we bussed merit badge scouts to wear until the pool was ready. But Ernie's leadership after that hurricane was just one of many life lessons he shared with me. So Ernie, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all you've done for me, with camp, with the entire council. Thank you. You are my hero, and heroes are hard to find.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to introduce Eric Lourdes. Eric worked at camp under Ernie for 10 summers, various posts, including the trading post, HQ, as HQ director, and assistant camp director, with some years off for good behavior. Eric always treated me well. You remember the old trading post? You had to go in the headquarters and stand off to the side if you were a staff member, and then you could get served, and you didn't have to wait online. So he would take care of me at that window. I appreciated that.
What Pete didn't know is we charged him double for that side door service. So I have the long speech, I have the short speech, and I have my list of excuses that I used when I was in headquarters. Which do you want to hear tonight? The excuses? Okay, the excuses it is. All right, it is a rare moment and an honor to share with you my thoughts about Ernie Heegard, my mentor and my friend, who I have known for over 50 years, mostly from spending 10 summers on Camp Horseshoe staff, but also through many years in Octorara Lodge and several travel adventures. Just the other day, Ernie reminded me of the time we ended up sleeping under the wing of my airplane at a small airport in Florida on our way to the Bahamas. That wasn't planned, but it was memorable. One of my life's many adventures, I'm not used to reading a speech. Of my life's many adventures, my summer Camp Horseshoe was among the very best. I give some credit to the camp itself, its hills, its woods, the tranquil Octorara Creek, the camp's overall beauty, such as the view from the chapel or the allure of the old camp road. But in particular, I credit Ernie Heegard's leadership as camp director. Working at camp was a learning experience. Many staff members were under 18, but all staff members were given responsibilities that they either rose to or not. The lessons I learned at Horseshoe have informed me in all my years since, and again, I give credit to Ernie by leading by example. His response to the ruined Camp Road after Hurricane Agnes that Bill just talked about was a classic example of his can-do attitude. I admired how organized Ernie was. He had duty rosters, folders, and systems for everything. He also had high standards about how the camp should be run, including its appearance. So every Sunday after breakfast, He had the entire staff line up and walk through the picnic grove looking for popsicle sticks and anything else that didn't belong there. I used to think the whole exercise was futile because in just a matter of hours, the visitors would come in and there would be more popsicle sticks on the ground. Eventually, I realized Ernie was right, this one time. If we didn't do it, this would look like we didn't care. The camp always had to look its best, and it did. Before too long, I noticed I was picking up litter on my own, having been indoctrinated by those Sunday morning rituals. It was not all work. We had a lot of fun, and there were many practical jokes. Just ask Jim Matthews. Is Jim here tonight? I haven't seen him. Just ask Jim Matthews about the Trading Post cash register. Working on staff meant long hours and low pay, but it was rewarding in many ways. However, there were times when something went wrong, and we were glad Ernie wasn't there to witness it. Except he had an almost supernatural knack for appearing just as someone said, "I'm glad Ernie's not here." Ernie recruited the very best for Horseshoe staff, and every summer there were many returning staff members. The returning staff, along with the newcomers, created an exemplary team that enhanced the reputation of Horseshoe as being one of the best scout camps in the country. The camaraderie among the staff was so high that the Alumni Association's annual reunions now bring back many, many staff members, former staff members, all eager to visit old friends and tell some tall tales. Speaking of which, no one could tell stories like Ernie could. His rendition of the cremation of Sam McGee was so evocative that even on a hot summer night, Ernie's description of that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge brought shivers to all souls. He also had a story, which he claimed to be true, about a close encounter with a bear that almost got a leg up on him. Scouting is one of the most positive experiences available for youth today. As we celebrate Chester County Council's 100th anniversary, there is no way to count how many thousands of youths have joined Scouting, learned important skills, gone camping, advanced in rank, and gone on to live lives of distinction and accomplishment. Tonight, we honor one of the many, many adults who have served Scouting. Few, if any, have given as full a measure of their lives as Ernie Heegard has to Troop 78, Camp Horseshoe, and Octorara Lodge. Ernie, on behalf of all your friends who are here tonight, and many, many more who are not here tonight, thank you. You are Chester County Council's distinguished citizen extraordinaire.
Thank you, Eric. That was great. I'd like to introduce now Matt Christensen. Matt worked for Ernie for 11 summers in various departments, maintenance, campcraft, and as the program director. And we had many memorable occasions at camp. I should say, we got one day off every 2 weeks. That's sort of the modern day equivalent of we walked uphill both ways to work. And one time we decided we were going to spend one of those precious days off on a flight to Martha's Vineyard on Eric's plane from Chester County Airport. The weather was bad up north, so we ended up flying to Ocean City, Maryland instead, which was even better because we got to buzz the camp as we went over. On the way, this was me, Eric, Matt, and Rich Mason in a 4-seater. And on the way back, it got dark. I don't know that we were trained for that. And so we were all looking for the beacon. And when we finally saw the thing, we landed at Chester County Airport. Matt kissed the ground when we got out of the plane. Literally. It was a beautiful day. Matt?
You know, a lot of people have come up to me and said, you know, there's a Matt Christensen in the Octorara Loop, a skinny guy with long hair. Is that you? And obviously not. And so I think it's a Photoshop picture. And Eric, thanks so much for taking my Sam McGee story. Things are starting off really good. Thanks, Eric. Good evening. And thank you very much for inviting me to share some thoughts at the Chester County Council Centennial Anniversary celebration honoring Ernie as a 2019 Distinguished Citizen. Cal Farley, founder of the Boys Ranch in Amarillo, Texas, once famously said that a boy is the only thing God can use to make a man. Yeah, that's a true fundamental of life that no one can argue with. But what I want to talk about this evening is the fact that a boy has many choices and many influences that can make him into a good man or make him into a not very good man. I'm here tonight to talk about this boy's journey into manhood. I am the person I am today in large part due to my association with Ernie Heegard. And I am so happy that we are here to honor this man who has influenced the lives of thousands of boys and helped them make them into really good men. I first met Ernie 50 years ago this year in my interview with him for a CIT position at Camp Horseshoe. I got the job in the summer of 1969 as a CIT and program maintenance department, and over the next 13 years held various positions, becoming Ernie's assistant as program director, and finally for me culminating as camp director at Camp Ware. And during these years, Ernie made a profound influence on my life and the direction it would take. There are just too many great adventures and life-building experiences that I have shared with Ernie to list this evening. But believe me when I say this boy is not alone. In fact, I bet there are many people in this room tonight that can readily recall the difference Ernie has made in their lives. And going outside of this room, think about all the youth at Haverford High School, Willistown Troop 78, Octorara Lodge 22, and Camp Horseshoe, whose lives were profoundly, positively influenced by Ernie. Someone once asked my dad if he was a little bothered by all the time I spent with Ernie on both scouting and personal experiences. My dad, who I love and admire immensely, replied that he thought the time I spent with Ernie offered me great opportunities and additional learning experience that he couldn't give me, but made me a better person. There's a large plaque in the OA Lodge commemorating the dedication of that building. The poem contained in this plaque is one that I love to read every time I'm in the lodge. It's somewhat abbreviated version of the poem written by Will Allen Drumgell. The original poem, though, beautifully sums up Ernie's life's mission, and I want to share it with you this evening. It's called The Bridge Builder. An old man going a lone highway came at the evening cold and gray to a chasm vast and deep and wide, through which was flowing a sullen tide. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The rapids held no fears for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. "Old man," cried a fellow pilgrim near, "you're wasting your time in building here. Your journey will end with the closing day. You never again will pass this way. You have crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build you this bridge at even tide?" The builder lifted his old gray head. "Good friend, in the path I have come," he said, "there followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. The stream which has been as naught to me, to that fair youth may a pitfall be. He too must pass in the twilight dim. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him." Ernie has built that bridge for so many of us through a life of dedication and unselfish service. Ernie, on behalf of all those boys that have benefited from their association with you, I want to convey their gratitude. And I also want to personally thank you for being such a great friend and mentor in my life. Congratulations tonight, Ernie. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That was fabulous. It's now time for the presentation of the Distinguished Citizen Award. The Distinguished Citizen Award is presented by Chester County Council, the individuals who exemplify in their daily lives the ideals of the Boy Scouts of America as expressed in the Scout Oath and Law. The recipient is chosen for outstanding service provided to a variety of organizations, as well as the respect and esteem in which they're held by their colleagues. That's clear tonight. This evening, we have an outstanding honoree. I would now like to call forward Steve Deantonio to introduce our honoree.
Matt's always been a tough act to follow. I don't get to tell stories. Good evening. I'm Steve Deantonio. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the current Scoutmaster of Troop 78. It's my honor tonight to introduce the Distinguished Citizen of the Year Award to Ernie Heegard. I've known Ernie for nearly 55 years. I first met him when I joined Troop 78 just after my 11th birthday. He has been my Scoutmaster, Camp Director, OA Lodge Advisor, and for the past 25 years, my Assistant Scoutmaster. Yeah, right. I will always consider him to be my Scoutmaster because I, like many of you, continue to learn from him and continue to be inspired by him. Few of us in life are lucky enough to meet and work with such an extraordinary person as Ernie, the kind of person that comes along maybe once in a lifetime. Troop 78, Chester County Boy Scouts, and Camp Horseshoe have been Ernie's life work, and we are all better for it. Ernie's accomplishments and awards are many. They're listed in his bio in the program, page 7. So I won't read them all, and he wouldn't want me to. I would like to give you just a little background, however. Ernie earned the rank of Eagle Scout in just 3 years, began working at summer camp as a dishwasher at a young age, served as the first boy chief of Octorara Lodge 22, was awarded the Vigil Honor by Octorara Lodge and given the Lenni Lenape name of Adjucitum, meaning teacher. How fitting. At the ripe old age of 31, Ernie received the highest volunteer award given by Chester County Council, the Silver Beaver. For much of his adult life, Ernie has simultaneously served as Scoutmaster, Camp Director, and OA Lodge Advisor. And for the 25 years since he gave up those 3 positions, he has continued to be active in support of the Horseshoe Scout Reservation, Octorara Lodge, and Willistown Troop 78, lending his talents wherever he sees the need. Since the previous speakers know Ernie mostly from working in camp, I'd like to talk just a little about Ernie's involvement in Willistown Troop 78. Although not yet officially Scoutmaster, Ernie took over the operation of Troop 78 at the age of 18. When he turned 21, he officially became Scoutmaster and would go on to serve for 40 years. While everyone thinks that their scout troop is the best, we were no different in Troop 78. Ernie taught us how to prepare ourselves and our patrols and to be the best we could be. We learned that practice and preparation are required to be successful, a credo that continues to this day. Ernie's mantra regarding competitions was, "We don't win everything, but we enter everything to win." But he also warned us that poor prior planning produces a pretty poor program. As we took on our leadership responsibilities, Ernie taught us that a good outdoor program is the most important thing to keep active scouts involved. Even during times when the troop ran on a shoestring budget, we had an active camping program. As scouts, we had great experiences at Camp Rees, Klondike Derbies, 2 weeks at Camp Horseshoe, annual wilderness canoe trips to Algonquin Park, spring break trips to Florida, and even occasional trips to places like the Swiss Alps and the Virgin Islands. Many of these trips became troop tradition and continue to this day. Ernie is known for his love of travel. He has traveled the world 2, maybe 3 times, but there was nowhere else on earth more important to him than Camp Horseshoe. Not everyone knows this. Ernie has camped at Camp Horseshoe every summer since he joined Boy Scouts at age 12, as a camper, a staff member, camp director, and an adult leader. He is a 74-year camper and continues to spend 2 weeks with Troop 78 each summer, doing whatever he can to help the troop and the camp during that time. Adults who stay with the troop each summer quickly learn that the deck chairs in the campsite are mostly for Sunday, because once the parents leave and the week starts, we are all involved in Ernie's special projects. And he will work at them just as hard as anyone. He's like the ever-ready bunny who just keeps going. It's almost as if Camp Horseshoe is Ernie's fountain of youth. As Scoutmaster, it is my honor at Eagle ceremonies to read the Eagle Charge. And whenever I do, I think of Ernie and his dedication to others, especially when I read the following lines. I charge you to undertake your citizenship with a solemn dedication. Be a leader, but lead only towards the best. So live and serve that those who know you will be inspired to finer living. And lastly, I charge you to be among those who dedicate their skills and ability to the common good. For many of us involved in scouting in Chester County, Ernie is among those people who have inspired us to finer living and caused us to dedicate our abilities to the common good, not because he told us to, but because we wish to follow his example. 16 years ago, when our troop first dedicated its new cabin, the inside walls were bare. Ernie posted 2 signs above the double doors of the main scout room, one as you enter and the other as you leave. The first sign says, "Enter to learn." And on the opposite side, as you exit the room, a second sign reads, "Depart to serve." Ernie has spent nearly his entire life serving others as both a teacher and a scout leader. He has had a positive and profound influence on at least 3 generations of scouts and scouters, and his lessons, scout spirit, and dedication continue to be passed on, not only here in Chester County, but wherever his former scouts, campers, and camp staffers may live. And so it is our distinct pleasure tonight to recognize and honor a selfless and remarkable man who continues to dedicate his life to the simple ideals set forth in the Scout Oath and Law and the ability of the scouting program to enrich and transform young lives. As we congratulate Ernie for an extraordinary lifetime of teaching, service, and inspiring others, let his example be a reminder that it is up to all of us to continue to carry the torch. To truly honor Ernie is to continue his work through your support of Camp Horseshoe, Octorara Lodge 22, and scouting in Chester County. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium our Scoutmaster, Lodge Advisor, Camp Director, and friend, Ernie Heegard.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of his accomplishments both in scouting and in the community, it gives me great pleasure to present the 2019 Chester County Council Boy Scouts of America Distinguished Citizen Award to Ernie Heegard. Congratulations, Ernie. Now we have one more thing to do here. Thing here, everybody. You all have that picture on the front of your program. One of our scouters, Mr. Castle, has transformed that picture into this wonderful painting for you, Ernie.
Wow.
Everybody a time limit, except Ernie.
Wow. You know, after all that, it's really hard to stand up here and take it all. I'm not used to do that. I like to stand up here and use the microphone and lead a song or tell a story or that sort of thing. And I want to thank some people tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who came here tonight, the special ones who sponsored tables, and all of my friends who have traveled a great distance. Matt came all the way from Seattle, Washington. Several people have come from Texas. And a shout out to Mark Chaluti, who snuck in here from the Council of Liberty Council. And I think he came to find out how we do things here in Chester County. Thank you, Mark. Anyway, we're celebrating 100 years of scouting in Chester County. There are not many councils who can say that. Either they've dropped out or merged with other councils, and Chester County has done it right for 100 years. No council could survive. We got a lot of things to thank. Charlie Heaston, maybe many of you don't know Charlie. He's long gone. He was the fourth chief of the council. He was the one that entered our council here after having tried 2 camps before Camp Horseshoe. The first one was just north of Downingtown at the Icedale Lake. Too little property was purchased at that time, soon around the lake, dotted cottages and that sort of thing. And so they had to move. Then they joined in with another council in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, in the South Mountains, and had a camp up there. Scouts would have to come to Horseshoe, not to Horseshoe, but to the camp there, by boarding old World War I trucks. They would travel off and join the other scouts in Carlisle, and then the next day, that group would come back by truck. Well, Charlie looked at that and said, hey, we can do better than that. We can find some place within Chester County and have a real nice camp. Well, he spent some time looking through deeds and that sort of thing in the courthouse at Westchester. And he found this property in southern Chester County called the Horseshoe Farm. It was abandoned at that time. And he traveled down to camp and looked it over. And probably many of you had heard this story before about trying to find somebody to take him into the camp. And it wasn't a camp then, it was a farm known as the Reynolds Farm. And he located Pogue's hardware store and talked to Mr. Pogue. And Mr. Pogue said, hey, don't go down there. It's pretty wild and woolly. It's pretty dangerous. But he said, I'll send my son down as kind of the interpreter or guide or that sort of thing. And so he went in camp that day and looked around, looked over the property, and he felt they were being watched. And truly they were, because there were 13 stills in operation on camp property. They saw no one because they could hop across the line and be safe in Maryland. And when Maryland would raid, they'd be in Pennsylvania, and they'd float their hooch down the Octorara. Anyway, he persuaded the board that this is a property that we could use. And it took some persuading. They said, probably, we can't afford that. I had occasion to sit down with Charlie when he would visit sometimes. He would sneak into camp, and he would like to sit on the front porch of the White House. And I joined him a couple of times, and I asked him several questions about that. And he said, well, they weren't sure they could raise the money, but I was. And he did a great job. The camp is one of the best ones in the country, and there are a lot of things that make it great. First, the property was just the property that was enclosed in the Horseshoe, which was a Horseshoe Farm. The Octorara Loop makes a complete circle, almost, around the whole camp. There's only just a few hundred yards between the part that goes out through the Maryland area and the other side, which is now Camp Ware. Well, the board members from then on had been aware of the problem we had at the Icedale Lake. And so when property became available, they bought it up. So we not only own the Horseshoe Loop there, but we now own almost 1,200 acres. And so you can walk all the way around the camp, and it would take you days and days to do it. And we have to thank them for that, because we have one of the best things going for us. He actually left us a jewel, something that most other camps have. They don't have the esprit de corps, the love for the property, as we all have, who are campers at Camp Horseshoe. The thing that makes our camp different from most camps, we're still a 7-day camp. Most have gone to the 6-day camp, and they leave on Saturday morning. Our scouts are there until Sunday afternoon. Another group comes right in behind them, and we keep going. That does a lot of things for a camp, because it extends the time that they're at camp. They have more time to finish their merit badges. They get involved in a big activity, and you heard from one of our scouts that they look forward to the Paul Bunyan Field Day and the Water Carnival. And then Saturday night is a big deal, and that's one of the projects that we're going to take care of, is the Achequidum Circle. Not because it was named for me, but it is a place where parents come. Each scout is called up there to receive an award, and an award for being at camp for at least 1 week. And then on Sunday, you heard about the great services that we have up at the chapel. But the thing that makes our camp different than most is our camp staff. You heard that reflected in some of the speeches here. And you know, when you surround yourself with the best that Chester County has to offer, you got to come up with a program like we have at Camp Horseshoe. From our neighboring council, we had one of their executives come over and mention that, you know, there's something special going on here at camp. And I said, yeah, well, but we don't have a lake, and we don't have a mountain over here. But he says, you have a staff that could run a program in a parking lot. And that is the truth. And I want to point out now all the guys that have spent time at Camp Horseshoe. So at this time, I'd like to have all those who have been camp directors at both Camp Horseshoe and Camp Ware. Would you stand, please? Camp directors. Yes, Camp Ware and Camp Horseshoe. Camp Ware. Now, the next would be the program directors. If you've ever been a program director at either camp, would you stand? Wonderful. Look at that. Now, if you've ever been a camper at Camp Horseshoe, would you stand? Now, if you've been a camp staff member, would you remain standing? All right, look at that. You know, as a camp director, I hate to go into details, but, you know, no matter what you plan for a day, never really happens that way. You know, you get up in the morning and you have things that you like to do, but from time to time, things just pop up, and you have to deal with them. And so I have a few little stories here. Well, let's start at this one. One Sunday at Sunday lunch, somebody came out of the kitchen and said, "Hey, we don't have any water." No water. And we were supplied by a big tank up on the hill. It actually used to be an old railroad car. But Jerry Brown, sitting right over there, offered to go up there and take a look in the water tank, and he came back laughing. He said, I looked inside, no water, just a little drip coming out of the pipe. I said, well, we have a real bad situation here, but luckily in those days, we also had a big cistern alongside of that. So luckily it was the last week of camp, and we had to go on short water ration, but we limped through there. And that very Sunday, we got a hold of a Slough Drilling Company in Rising Sun, and he came in and started drilling on Monday. So then we had 2 wells, and we were able to continue on. But there's another thing that's tied in with the water, and many of you don't realize this, and probably few of you have been around to see it. In the early years of camp, we only had 5 campsites: Sherwood, Boomsburg, Carson, Crockett, and Taylor. And they're called stockades. And this is one of the things we can attribute to Charlie Heaston. He decided when he built the camp, he wanted to build one that was going to be used for a lot of years. And so all the buildings he built, with the exception of 6 of them, are still in use today. Those stockades, the dining hall, which has been expanded 3 times, is still in use today. Browning Lodge, McIlvaine Lodge, but those 6 buildings that are no longer in use were latrines. Back in those days, they were all flush toilets. And probably some of you are gasping at that. Flush toilets back then. Yep, there were 5 pieces in each one. We had 3 toilets and 2 urinals, gleaming white china. But then that water problem came up again. We started growing at camp with leap and bounds and started to add campsites and that kind of thing. And we didn't have the water to supply to those toilets or to take care of the wastewater. So we had to replace those with latrines. So that goes back to Charlie, who also wanted to make sure we had a swimming pool in camp. And that swimming pool was in Maryland, just over the Mason-Dixon line. We are also lucky to have in camp a Mason-Dixon Stone. It's now in a cage down there, and it dates back to William Penn's time, and he started to have the Mason-Dixon line surveyed. And so that stone that is in there now was placed there by Mason and Dixon, and the stone actually came from England over on a ship. The one we have is a mile marker. It has an M on one side and a Pennsylvania or a P on the other side. Every 5 miles, there's a crown marker. We're not fortunate enough to have one of those in camp. But that Mason-Dixon line proved to be a real bonus, because for a long, long time, the pool that Charlie Rogers, I keep calling Charlie Rogers, I'm sorry, Charlie is over there. It reminds me of him. But Charlie Heaston got some flack from the National Council and said, hey, you have a beautiful stream here. You're using it now for boating and also for swimming. Why don't you continue using that? Oh, no, he said, I want a swimming pool. So we got the first big size pool. It's almost Olympic size, and it was the largest swimming pool at its time in 1930, this side of the Mississippi. And because it was right over the line, Maryland pool inspectors never knew we had it until somebody flew over one day and said, wow, that's our pool. So they came in and inspected it from then on. I kind of used it one day. We had the national inspection in, and they wanted to know, what are you doing with your trash and garbage? Well, I said, we're having it hauled out of state. Just over the line up where you come into camp now, we did have a big ditch there that was used as our trash taking, a place where we dump our trash, and it was burned every weekend. But anyway, got away with that one. Aside from having water problems, we've had some real changes to our dining hall. And I think there's somebody wrote a history of Camp Horseshoe, and they mentioned that the back end of the dining hall was caught on fire and burned. But that was not the case. We decided that we needed a new kitchen, and this was when Walt Ryan was camp director, or no, scout executive, I'm sorry. He was also the one that brought the paved road to camp, and that was one of his things that he wanted to do for the time he was in charge of Chester County. So we got enough people to donate enough money to pave the road into camp, which is the lower road. And as you heard, Agnes came along 24 hours later and rolled it up. But he also wanted to put a new kitchen in our dining hall, and a lot of the Order of the Arrow took care of that. We had Bill Trowell, he's here tonight. He was the one climbed up on the back end of the dining hall and took a chainsaw to it. We also had Lee McIlvaine there with his backhoe and front end loader. And between Friday night and Sunday morning, the back end of the dining hall disappeared. And we have those guys to thank and for the money that was raised to give us a new kitchen. But right in front of that is our parade field. Our parade field is blessed every night to have a full dress retreat, not something that's going on in any other camp that I've ever been to, but all scouts meet there in complete uniform, march onto the field, and pay respects to the flag. I want to tell you a little story about one night, actually a Saturday night when we have all the visitors there. We started the retreat ceremony. Scouts went on to the field. And then the adjutant, who was the program director, calls the troops to attention and gets their salutes and that kind of thing out of the way. And then the bugler steps forward and plays retreat. But unfortunately that night, the regular bugler had gone on leave. And either he forgot to get somebody to replace him, but anyway, there was no bugler. So there was just a drum roll to accompany retreat that night, and everybody was looking around, what's going to happen next? Well, the cannon fired, the drum roll started, and one of our youngest staff members stepped forward, and his name was Scotty Holmes. And Scotty was a short guy, and he was into everything, but he was an outstanding headquarters CIT. So he stood up there, made a bugle out of his fist. Well, I want to tell you, the place just about broke up. They held back the laugh as much as they could, but for the rest of that field, when they marched off, they were going off laughing. So thank you for Scotty Holmes that night, and it was a retreat to be remembered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you so much, everyone. Dave, you're on. I'd like everyone to please join us for the singing of the camp song. This is in the loop of the Octoraro Bend. The words can be found in your program on page 36. What happened to my program? Here we have Kevin Gruell, who wrote the words to the song.
Mason-Dixon line, historic land where value shine. Oh, horseshoe, your memories will e'er be mine in the loop of the Octoraro Bend. The sun comes up over Flagpole Hill, where Old Glory flew and is flying proudly still, and will march to the call at the end of the day in the loop of the Octoraro Bend. So let's hoist our packs once again, my friend, where the waters flow round the tranquil horseshoe bend, and we'll hike and camp in the old scout way in the loop of the Octoraro Bend. They built our camp up on the Mason-Dixon line, historic land where values shine. Oh, horseshoe, your memories will e'er be mine in the loop of the Octoraro Bend. He served our camp up on the Mason-Dixon line, his years as chief number 29. Your lessons will e'er be mine in the loop of the Octoraro Bend.
Okay, we'll pick up those pledge cards for the centerpiece, and then whoever is the victor, you may take it, right, and turn your pledge card in. I should say a word I forgot to mention before. In the program, at the bottom of most pages is a saying in a blue box. These are what we colloquially refer to as Ernieisms. If you read them, you know you've heard them over the years as guides to life. And so, put an egg in your shoe and beat it. I hope you enjoyed the evening. We had a wonderful time. We raised a lot of money for camp. We closed our gap tonight, we hope. For those of you who want either the centerpiece or a live auction item, please check in at the desk and we'll close on those. We are taking video testimonials, as you saw earlier. There's a crew that will be in the reception lobby for anyone who wishes to say a word to Ernie. And again, we're going to have dessert and coffee. Thank you, everyone, for your support of Ernie, Chester County Council, and Scouting.